All right. Hello, Mr. Jackson. Well, foremost, thank you for allowing us the opportunity to ask you a couple questions today and be a part of this interview process with us. My name is Jakiria.
I'm looking for style.
Alright, and together with our group, it was just a compilation of different questions that we felt that would be beneficial to gain information from you with. And we were given an opportunity from Dr. Wilkins to go ahead and read a biography that she provided us. And so we gathered a couple details about your life from what she was able to share with us. There are still a couple of underlying questions that we still have and wanted to bring up today. So the first one, nowadays you're pretty well known as a leader in St. Pete community and even having our own community center being named after you. So we have the question of, were you born in St. Pete?
No, I was not born in St. Pete. I was raised in St. Pete. I was born in Tampa, Florida.
Tampa, so just around the corner, but not St. Pete. Right. So growing up in Tampa, then what was it like for you? What was the city like?
Basically, I wasn't raised in Tampa. My mother and father separated, and my mother took the train when Dad went to work. Took the train, brought us over here. Her people were living in St. Petersburg.
Okay.
So she left my dad, came back to her people, and that's how I got here. So after I was raised here in St. Pete, not Tampa, but I would visit Tampa all the time, to see my dad and folks on that area. So, but all I know is St. Petersburg.
Gotcha.
I don't know too much about Tampa.
I understand. So born in Tampa, raised in St. Pete.
Right.
Got it. So the next question, just to follow up with the whole geographical location question, we wanted to ask you if there were any aspects of your childhood, growing up in the St. Pete area, that may have laid a groundwork for your future involvement in the civil rights movement. So were there any parts of your childhood that may have sort of compelled you to want to be involved in the civil rights movement?
A young man at that time, he was attorney Fred G. Bennett. And he was adamant about education and the civil rights movement. And he took me under his wing because I go cut his yard and rake the yard to make a little money.
Right.
And so that's how I learned about the civil rights movement and got involved in it. And I got involved with Savelle Brown. I don't know whether you all know him or not. But Savelle Brown marched with Martin King and A. Andrews and everybody, And so I got involved with SCLC, doing that particular movement. And we had meetings here in St. Pete with the cabinet of Martin Luther King Jr. right here in downtown St. Pete. And went on a couple of marches in Jacksonville and Atlanta, places, even right here in St. Pete. There was peaceful marches. There wasn't a stuff with that march we see today. It was very peaceful. And so I worked with that. Then I got involved with the MLK parade, which is still existing, didn't happen this past year.
Right.
So they brought bands in from all over the country, HBU school bands, and it was an educational to show the children that you can move forward with your life. There was more than just hanging out in the street. There was an educational component that people can learn seeing what other people were doing. And the sponsorship failed, so he couldn't bring them anywhere. And then the city took the parade away from him and gave it to another group of people. And I worked with them still, but the pandemic just stopped it all.
Yeah, that was this past year was really disappointing in that regard. I go to the Martin Luther King parade every year, so not being able to go to it last year was a different experience. Although the community still, I'm not from the St. Pete area, I'm from more of the Polk County area, and that community over there still tried to, accommodate for it, like some virtual events and stuff, but it was a lot different than typical years. But that's interesting together all those HBCUs for just one, respective cause. That's really interesting.
Alright, so just to keep even on the ground, so as far as we know, your public story began at 14 when you became a lifeguard at the Southern Mall. What drew you to being a lifeguard? Can you tell us a little bit about the process of becoming a lifeguard?
Yes, you gonna laugh about that.
When you were a lifeguard,
Basically, a lady, there was a pond over there, 28th Street and 26th Street, where Wildwood Elementary School was. There was a pond, we used to play and swim in there, in the mud, play, having fun. And when I would go visit my granddad at John Park, I would sneak over there and get the worst whooping of my life. When I went there. So, this lady, Miss Jenny Holmes, she gave the city $25,000 to build a pool in that area. And so I was going to sneak in the pool all the time. Didn't know how to swim, got the worst whooping of my life. But a guy by the name of Ernest Shuey and a young lady by the name of Beatrice going to both of the seats now, took me in, and I was throwing the pool and just because I couldn't get in, couldn't pay to get in. So they decided to put me to work. And so I learned how to swim, got on the swim team, and Ernest Lee, we took me all over the country, learned how to dive and all that, one couple diving trophies, but I was that small back then, nothing big. But anyway, make the story short, they called me in a meeting at Spar Beach Pool, Ernest Lee, Ray Lighton, and the John D. God brought me in and said, we want you to be a lifeguard. They didn't tell me they had an accident at Old South Road, which is Demon Landing. You know what Demon Landing? They do what they call the colored beach, or the Negro beach.
Right.
During segregation, you couldn't go to Star Beach. You couldn't go there, you had to go here. So that could be a lifeguard there. We used to swim all the way over to the airport and back, having fun. Nothing never happened. But a guy dove off the seawall, sprung his neck, his spine, he soon the lady died later. And so when I became a lifeguard, I was instructed to be hard. Don't let nobody dive off the wall or whatever. And there were two elderly people that ran a little cafe there, Roxanne Donaldson and Mr. Ed Donaldson. And the most experience I ever had, he had a big hickey up on his head. Now, you might laugh about this. And it's not fictitious, it's the truth. He had a big hickey on his head. And when that hickey started doing bouncing, he would tell us, get everybody out the water. So, that little better, blow everybody out the water. And a storm would come up. Real bad storm would always come up. And that's how I started. Yeah. I was too young to start.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that story with us. It's quite interesting. To follow up on that same topic, you being a lifeguard kind of sparked our interest, and we wanted to know if being a lifeguard impacted your understanding in race relations and safety at the time. And I know, and the answer that you just gave, you did mention how the beaches were, or those areas were still segregated at the time. So we just wanted to know if being a lifeguard impacted your understanding of that.
It did. They used to have the term they call snowbirds.
Right.
Coming in from the north during certain seasons.
you still use it?
Yeah, right. So, I was afforded an opportunity when lifeguard wasn't at Spar Beach. They started putting me on the Spar Beach. And then the white police officer would always mess with me. They would always, I got accused of stealing, but guess what? A lot of the people on the beach backed me up. They stood behind me. And that's what caused me to do that. The involvement I got into. The people really backed me up. And he didn't know, he was sitting in that chair. So whoever lied on him, and so, they were nasty at that time. But when I never went to jail or nothing, but they used to happen me all the time.
Right.
Yeah. But, it happened.
Alright, so the next question, in the spread across the East Coast, where people of color will go through white-only beaches and go into water. The movement also grew in Sarasota, especially in Lido Beach, and here in St. Peter's on Spa Beach. Did you witness or participate in these beach-wide events or in the types of activities at the time?
Yes, and no, it fluctuated, you know. I guess the city got really more aggressive at that time to go to those places. And people stopped wanting to do it. But it worked. At the end, everything opened up.
Did you win in one of those?
No, I was never in one of those.
No.
No, I was always working.
You were working?
Yeah, I was working in the spot, you know, on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
But I was here all the time.
Okay.
Alright. So the next question we have is just, so all the articles that we were able to read about you, they indicate that you're a kind of a facilitator and a mentor figure. We want to know if you aimed for this role or if it, you know, it just came about, and how effective have you found it?
There were, and I would have started this with people in my life, and you've heard of village, it takes a village to raise a child.
Right.
You know, there's Eloise Perkins, Joe Johnson, which was a basketball coach, and those folks, the Monroe, they took me in, a little ugly boy, they took me in, a little bad boy, they took me in, and that inspired me to give back.
Right.
That really inspired me to give back. And I decided, I went out to school several times, you know, and every time I come back, I wanted to give in back to the city. Even with the National Aquatic Crew, became a lifeguard instructor. There was only 2 blacks in the 6 southern states. A guy named Wilbur Campbell and myself. I ended up going to Albany State College in Albany, Georgia, to work with him for a while. We got a scholarship to go there. With attorney Fred Minnis. So that I got that move to go. When my mother got sick, I had to come back home. So basically, yes, that's how I got involved.
Our next question. So in our class, we're working with a small history museum in Pasadena, and we're especially interested in the history of the beach communities here in Pinellas County.
Mm-hmm.
Since you were a lifeguard and a swimmer, did you ever go to those Gulf beaches to go swimming?
No, you couldn't swim.
Why not?
They wouldn't allow you to swim. You wouldn't allow you to swim at all. See, Pasadena used to be owned by a black family.
Mm-hmm.
They used to own that whole strip of land. When they got out, you couldn't go. 'Cause that was before my time.
Right.
Yeah, but no, you couldn't go out there.
Just follow-up question. Do you have any friends that used to go? Do you knew some people at the time that used to sneak in?
When they went to go to visit that family, Dr. Cannon,
Mm-hmm.
that lady now 93 years old, 83 or something like that. So you see how long that's been.
That's interesting to know, because throughout this whole process of researching and being involved with the Pasadena Museum during the semester, the question is always raised of, you know, why is that community predominantly white? So we were really curious as to why there weren't any too many other races that lived over there that, you know, that we see nowadays. So I feel like that's
Well, they bought them all out.
explanatory.
They bought them all out.
Right.
When they bought the Johnsons out, I think their name was Johnson. When they bought them out, and that was it. They done all that then.
Okay. All right. So the next question, we read that you worked for the Department of Parks and Recreation for a long time. So we wanted to know what was the atmosphere and attitude of the department when you worked there. So what was the environment like when you worked there, and has it changed over the years?
It has definitely changed over the years. It changed. I worked there for 56 years. And it's definitely changed. Because when I first started as a lifeguard and moved into the rec center, there was a separation. There was the north side and the south side.
Right.
It was always a separation. You know, on the state directors, he couldn't work on this end, he could only work on the south side. As the years transformed to it better the situation because as new director came in, changes started taking place. Under the new mayor, things started taking place. When I became a center supervisor, I made it mandatory that my staff be integrated. You know, because I wanted our kids to see a change in the people and in the structures that we have. And I put pressure on the other center supervisors to make a change in their center. Let's integrate these staff. It makes a difference, you know. And that's what happened. It was hard, and I got reprimanded a couple of times by it. But if you go look at my phone, you can't find it. They never put it in there, but I got reprimanded real hard. One example, I had a 5-year-old told her mother that somebody took a dime from her. The mother worked for sanitation. The director at that time came down and jumped all over me about that dime. You know, and I was called all kind of names. You can name it. I was called every name but a child of God. You know what I'm saying? But when the truth came out, the kid had the dime in his pocket. They thought I had stolen the dime. Took the money from the child. You know what I mean? But, and that same person, I had to save him from going to jail, from jumping on the white girl one night. When I was fishing on the pier. You see what I'm saying? So, yeah, everything. I've seen a big change. And today is much better than it's ever been.
Following on, have you seen those changes? What is the importance for you? What is the importance for African Americans feeling welcome in our city's public spaces? Why do you think that's important?
It shows unity in our city. It just continues to go the way it's going now. And it shows a reflection throughout the United States that this is the place that you can raise children. I believe that.
All right. To follow with that, do you think that because before they couldn't go to those public spaces, that have any impact, any last long impact?
Yeah, well, people my age, maybe 65 years old can remember that stuff. It had to last long in effect. Mm-hmm. But the new generation of folks, it has no effect whatsoever. But they can go any way they want to go now. Mm-hmm. Anyway.
Yeah, that definitely resonated with me just because just hearing about, your story and the other people that I've been able to speak with just who have witnessed the history firsthand where it wasn't history to them, it was their lives and stuff. It's just really interesting. Well, it just calls for like a sense of gratitude that I can't relate to it as firsthand as you would be able to. So I can definitely see why you say that. The next question that we have, so it's formed in with saying, Mr. Jackson, you've clearly been an integral part of the Gulf Beaches community, State Peak community, and its progression throughout the years. How do you feel about the Gulf Beaches' social progress as it stands today? And are there any major issues that you feel still need to be addressed within the community?
Well, people can go anywhere they want to go now. I don't see any problems at all at this time. None whatsoever. You can go and you might get other than past administration, you might have some issues, but I don't think that's going to happen anymore. I just can't see it happen. I just think people go anywhere they want to have fun. Gulf beaches, anywhere. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah.
So our next question, do do you interact with younger generations in the community regarding civil rights and race relations? How does your experience of the past influence the advice and guidance you're able to give them?
When you tell people the truth, it sets them free. I worked with the court team for the city of St. Petersburg, and our job, when a situation arises, is to go out and tell the people the truth. And normally when the people hear the truth and not lie, they accept the truth and move on. But they will not accept the lie. You know, and anything that look coverage, like it's a cover, you got issues. But if you tell them from that, and we have about 16 people that does that for the city of St. Petersburg, and I volunteer for that now. If it's a shooting by a police officer, they'll call us in and say, this is what happened, tell the people. And you notice you don't have an issue in St. Pete. But when you try to cover, you got to make issues, even in St. Pete, if it happens. We try to make sure that doesn't happen.
One final question that I had personally, the one that we also we integrated into our list of questions. And you touched on it subtly earlier in the lineup, but I wanted to know how the current Black Lives Matter movement that we've seen within this past year and the methods of which the concerns were approached, so the way that they went about or we went about the Black Lives Matter movement recently, how was that comparable to the ways that previous civil rights movements occurred? So from the time that you were involved at the forefront, how is that different from what just happened and what's continuing to happen?
I believe the difference, there was hidden agendas. There was hidden agendas with the Black Lives Matter thing because some folks wanted to create a disturbance.
Right.
There was a group, from what I understand, that was trying to create a disturbance with the Black Lives. The Black Lives Matter meaning has a good meaning and has a good purpose for what it was designed for.
Right.
But there was underlying issues with outside groups who were trying to create a problem. And if you read it in the news, like for example, they burned the man's place over there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's not what it's all about.
Right.
Destruction. So they want to destroy and create a problem. But I believe it has a good purpose. And Black Lives does matter. Not only Black Lives, White Lives, everybody lives matter. But life is a gift that's coming from God for everybody, no matter what race, creed, or color. You know, it matters.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what people have to understand and accept. And most people accept that. So I think the undercurrent of those individuals that are trying to create a problem is the main issue that we have to stop. And we need to get on top of it.
What do you think getting on top of it would involve? Like, what do you think what are some things you think we can do to kind of change that way of going about things?
Now, you might laugh about this, but I think every religious organization,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be Catholic, Protestant, Baptist, Methodist, you name it, need to come together and make it work. It's not going to work until these people come together and stand for that which is right. There's too much separation.
Right. There we go.
You know, this little group, this city council, that's what, in the city, the council unit, and that's why I won't run for city council. They need to come together.
Join forces.
Yeah. And put on the same hat for the same purpose, to save the city and be concerned about all of the people in the city, not just one sector.
Right.
Yeah. I ain't gonna think what I want to say. Just stop telling lies. That's what I want to say.
Another quick question.
Yeah.
You touched briefly that what has been your role, or what have you been doing for what just happened the past year with Black Lives Matter and it's keep happening? You've been like interacting a lot with this community, with this group, or like this?
No, I have not. I've been sitting in the background with talking with police chief,
Mm-hmm.
that they call out my opinion. I've been going out, watching certain issues, you know, and then voicing my opinion. That's what I've been doing,
Okay.
you know. So, and I've been volunteering with the young folk. So, trying to talk to them. You see, one of the major problems that we have in our city is not the young folks between the ages of 12 to 18, but the problem lies from 18 to 35. And then you have the different nationalities fighting with territorial rights, selling drugs. That's the problem. That's why you got all the killing. It's a drug thing. And people, you know, that's what it is. But who wants to touch it? Nobody's willing to stand up and touch it. You know, so that's the problem.
Thank you, sir. And that was the last of the questions that we have prepared to propose.
Well, I hope I did too good.
Before we conclude, I want to check the audio before we let him go because I just want to be sure we got you in good recording. So once we check that, we're good. Thank you very, very much for your time, sir.
Well,
I know it wasn't like a big to-do thing, but we still appreciate it.
yeah.
I want to be professional, right? Do you have any comment for us, any advice for us, any last thoughts that you want to share with us?
Anything you want to send home with us today?
No, you know, I'm just happy to be able to hope I can be a little good to you.
Right.
You know, that's all.
Yeah, we do that exam. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.